sunlight just can't reach. That's why a person's sleeping cycle is completely different from the natural one. Everyone has to create an artificial sleep cycle here. Now you might be wondering, if so many people are stuck in one place for so long, where do they get their food? When a submarine goes on a mission, it's loaded with up to 20,000 kilograms of food supplies. But what's even more surprising is that there's no special storage for this food in the submarine. Instead, all the food is spread out throughout the entire submarine. All the stuff is spread out on the corridor under the beds, and the crew members literally walk over them. In the first few days, fresh fruits, vegetables, and milk products are available. These have to be consumed in the initial weeks. After that, the entire crew survives on canned and frozen food. But food on submarines is considered top-notch because it's the one thing that keeps the crew's morale high, hundreds of meters below the surface. If the food gets boring on a submarine, depression can set in. That's why on some long missions there are ice cream machines and sometimes steak nights too. There are proper kitchens and chefs here, but to reduce accidents, all cooking is done on electric stoves and ovens. And the coolest part is, usually people eat 3 meals a day. But in a submarine, there are actually 4 meals: breakfast, lunch, dinner, and then a midnight snack. This midnight meal is served after midnight. The reason is the environment inside a submarine is super stressful. Because of this, the crew members burn more calories than an average person. To keep them from feeling sluggish, they add an extra meal. Also, for those working the night shift, the midnight meal is their main source of energy. Now, here's the most surprising part: oxygen. The submarine is hundreds of meters below the ocean surface, and there are no windows you can just open to get fresh air. It's basically a sealed metal tube. So, where do submariners get fresh oxygen from? Keeping oxygen cylinders in a submarine for a long time is risky because oxygen is flammable. That's why submarines have an amazing electrolysis system. They split the salty seawater to separate oxygen, and the leftover hydrogen gas is released. Each person uses about 600 liters of oxygen daily. With 130 crew members, the system has to produce around 78,000 liters of oxygen every day. It's basically like an underwater space station. If the system fails, the crew starts feeling short of breath within minutes. But just making oxygen inside a submarine isn't enough to keep the crew alive. When people breathe, they release carbon dioxide too. So, if oxygen is being produced and used up on one hand and carbon dioxide is building up without being removed, the air gets unbalanced. If the carbon dioxide levels go above 10%, it becomes really dangerous. That's why modern submarines have carbon dioxide scrubbers. The air inside the submarine is passed through a tower where a liquid called amine is sprayed. This chemical absorbs only the carbon dioxide from the air. But if the system fails, then in emergencies, canisters of soda lime or lithium hydroxide are placed around. When air passes through these canisters, the chemicals react with carbon dioxide and turn it into solid carbonate. This is only for emergencies because once a canister is full, it becomes waste, and disposing of it becomes a whole new problem. On a submarine, having fresh water is super important for cooking, showering, laundry, and drinking water. But the water it's surrounded by is all salty. So this water is cleaned by distillation, which means turning it into steam, or by filtering it through reverse osmosis. Nuclear submarines don't run out of energy, so they use distillation to get fresh water. Modern submarines, on the other hand, have high-tech filters that remove salt from seawater to make fresh water. Water can be made on board, but there are strict rules for using it. Nobody gets 15 minutes in the shower here. A submarine is only allowed 60 seconds of shower time. Even though they're surrounded by the ocean, submarines literally crave every single drop of water. Getting rid of waste in a submarine is also a huge tactical challenge. Submarines are under so much pressure underwater that even a small hole would flood it like a tidal wave, just like what happened with the U-1206. So, how do they manage toilet waste and wastewater? Toilet waste collects in a sanitary tank. When this tank gets full, super powerful pumps are used to dispose of the waste directly into the sea. These pumps push the waste out with more pressure than the sea itself. During this process, the valves have to open in the exact right order. If the outer valve opens before the inner one, seawater could blast inside the submarine. As for solid trash, it's compacted and packed into steel containers and sometimes launched out using torpedoes. The machines handle all the rest of the work, but what about the humans? They say a person's biggest enemy here is their own mind. No sunlight for months, almost no contact with family, the same smell, the same walls, and the same faces. Crew members can suffer from depression, anxiety, and claustrophobia. Even a small argument on a submarine can turn dangerous. That's why the submarine uses lighting that mimics natural daylight during the day and switches to red lights at night to give the mind a signal that it's nighttime. But whatever happens, the crew has to make life and death decisions in these conditions. In October 1944, the USS Tang, a famous submarine, fired a torpedo, but because of a tiny miscalculation, the torpedo did fire, but it ended up circling back and hitting the same submarine that launched it. Whether it's the U-1206's toilet incident or the USS Tang's own torpedo mishap, these accidents show us that a submariner's life isn't just about fighting the enemy, it's about battling your own mind, your own machine, and the silent ocean where one mistake means death. Hope you all like and share this video from Velmora TV. Thanks so much for your love and comments. See you in the next awesome video.